section was on natural hazards. So question number 1 was asking you to highlight the following statement about tropical storms. The correct answer was D. Tropical storms form above oceans where temperatures are over 27 plus. Okay, so that was a nice and easy 1 mark question. Question number 1.2. Hopefully that follows the recording. There you go. You had a graph over here of the number of typhoons, tropical storms or typhoon in this case, and the month in which they occur. The question said the total number of typhoons reaching Japan was 204. What percentage of the total number of typhoons occurred in August? Give your answer to the nearest whole percentage. So if you gave me the percentage without any workings, I had to give you 2. If you gave me the workings but got the wrong answer, I had to give you 1. And if you gave me all of them, I gave you 2 marks as well. Okay, so the correct answer was 34%. You didn't have to have the workings, but on the whole, if you were to average up, because it said the nearest whole percent, the answer was 33.82. But if you round that up to 34, that works. And some of you rounded down to 33. Unfortunately, I had to mark you as just 1 mark for the workings. So please make sure you read the whole question, because it did say the nearest whole percentage. So again, not too difficult, requiring a bit of maths, but with a bit of math skills, it's pretty straightforward, easy percentage question. So question 1.3, it then said, give 1 reason why tropical storms have a seasonal pattern. You've got a few examples here on the mark scheme on the right of what you could have written. It said here they occur in late autumn and summer when sea temperatures are the highest. They have to be over water that's 26, 27 degrees and to a depth of at least 50 meters of that temperature. They only occur when the atmosphere is unstable, so in an area of low pressure. And so if you made a reference of a high temperature on their own, that would be insufficient. You had to actually give me the percentage, and that's where a lot of people didn't get the mark. They told me you have to have hot water, just forgot to tell me how hot, because I'm currently making coffee in the office. Hot water for me, for that, would be about 100 degrees. So you have to say how hot it gets, okay? Question 1.4. That was a really nice one, because you had a picture there of a tropical storm. Obviously, it was a cyclone because it's in the Indian Ocean, hitting the east coast of Africa and the east coast of Mozambique. The question said, describe the structure. And the structure literally just means how it looks and how it's formed. So you can see there. Sorry, there you go. If you scroll, it says the cyclone has an eye. You would have got a mark for that. It's got a circular eye. It's got a circular eye and has no cloud, would be another mark. If you said it was a swirl of clouds surrounding the sky, if you'd say that it was going in a anti-clockwise, clockwise direction, so it's turning that way around, that would give you another mark. So you've got a whole list there of things you could have said, but some of them are simple as saying, I can see an eye in the center of the storm, and I can see clouds circling around the eye. You get your 2 marks. So actually quite easy, but don't overthink it. The questions like this, you just have to say what you see. Okay. You could also have used a scale and told me you could sort of said the size of the storm. So you could say quite a big structure, quite a big storm. Okay. So question 1.5 was the first beast of a question. It was a 6-mark question. You can see there in red a few annotations I've made. The good thing here is that you were given the case study of Cyclone Idai at the top. You didn't know anything about it prior to you opening this paper, and in it, they give you an awful lot of information. So it's there, use it, okay? The question says, suggest why some tropical storms have severe primary and secondary effects. Use figure 3 and your own knowledge. So you had to use figure 3. You couldn't just talk about Typhoon Haiyan because it said here to use figure 3. You've got facts, use them. It also said use figure 3 and your own knowledge. So some of you completely binned the case of Haiyan, didn't even mention it, but did ask your own knowledge, your own understanding. Okay, so it might be worth using your case study if you've got one as well. Combine both together. But on the whole, you all did really well. You clearly understood what this primary effect was and the secondary effect was. The one thing I'd say is it talks here about the severity. So for the severity, you have to say which is worse, and you have to explain why. So when we talk about you have a paragraph saying primary effects are, secondary effects are, but you have to say, I think primary effects are worse because I think, however, other people might think secondary effects are worse because. And the key part a lot of people forgot, I wrote here in red, missing, is talking the concept of vulnerability, GDP, prediction, protection, preparation. So if you scroll down the mark scheme, it says here maximum level 2 for explanation of primary and secondary effects only. And a lot of you did that. You explained primary and secondary effects really well, but didn't really talk about the severity of these effects. And to talk about severity, you could have compared Typhoon Haiyan And you could also, and if you scroll further down the mark scheme there, it says, that's the whole box I circled. It says here the assessment of why some storms have severe effects. But you should have to maybe talk to me about the speed of the wind, the size of the storm surge, the amount of rain, the amount of people, the population density, the GDP and wealth of a country, the vulnerability of the people, were they prepared? Could they predict the storm? What if not? Why? Think about the link between low GDP and the fact there was lack of preparation, planning, and protection. Think about the physical geography. So you've got low coastal areas. The Philippines was islands. It's an archipelago, so it means the storm can generate energy whilst crossing the country instead of losing energy as it crosses land. Talk to me about the lack of sea defenses. So that's the parts which really make you go from a 4 mark out of 6 to 6 out of 6. You have to tell me, great, you know what a primary impact is, you know what a secondary impact is, you can give me an example and explain why one is bad or the other is worse, but you have to tell me the severity. Sometimes the severity has got nothing to do with wealth. It could just be the fact that it hit the country at 2 a.m. in the morning. It'll have massive consequences, whatever country, because everybody's asleep and not prepared. And that's what you had to talk about here. And then if we keep scrolling down your mock, you've got question 1.5. It said, oh no, we've just done that one, sorry. Question 1.6, hopefully it catches up. There we go. You had a picture there of Japan with loads of information on it. You had a key with different plate boundaries. You had the size of the circle was the size of the of each earthquake on the Richter scale. And the question asked you, using figure 4, which of the following statement is true? You only had to circle 1, so don't go circling 2 just in case. If it says 1, there's only one answer. And the answer there was B. Most earthquakes happen on east and southeast of Japan, because that's where the fault line lies. Okay. Question 1.7, it said the type of plate margin. The answer was destructive or convergent, so when two plates collide into one another and one sinks below the oceanic plate colliding and subducting under the continental plate. So the Pacific plate is subducts under the Eurasian plate. That's a destructive plate margin. You just had to name it. And question 1.8, it said suggest one other tectonic hazard likely to occur near the plate margin shown in figure 4. Other hazards to an earthquake would be a volcanic eruption, a tsunami, for instance. Okay. So I think I was generous there and I gave a mark to people who used the word earthquake, but ideally there was the answer was different to an earthquake. And then question 1.9, the question was asking you, explain how the risk of a tectonic hazard can be reduced. 4 marks. So you had to make a point, you had to explain it, you had to make another point and explain it, and that was it. So in this case, you've got loads of things to talk about. You've got protection, you've got preparation, and you've got prediction. All I needed you to do was to pick one and tell me how it works. And the key thing here was to tell me, I wrote it here in red, why it's positive. So, for example, some of you might have said, planning, hospital emergency services residents may practice for an earthquake. They have earthquake drills in all public buildings so that people know what to do in the event of an earthquake. That's your point, okay? The explanation would be, this helps to reduce impact and increase the chances of survival. Planning may also involve emergency evacuation plan. You're making your point, but you're explaining how and why that idea is a good idea and not just like a random idea you came up with under exam pressure. Okay, so if you talk about planning, give me an example of planning. Tell me how it works and why it would help. If you talk about prediction, talk about the fact you can forecast where hazard will strike. This can be done with more and more reliability. As a result, less people will be aware of the level of risk they'll be facing and be able to make informed decisions, something along those lines. Okay, so just a lot of you got 2 marks there because you made a point. You gave me 2 examples of protection and an example of planning, and I was like, cool, what about them? How they good? Why did they help? Question 1.10, it said here, state one source of evidence for long-term change during the Quaternary period. The Quaternary period, you might remember from your revision, is the current geological period. Okay, so it's now. And the question is, just give me evidence of climate change. Rising temperatures isn't evidence, okay, because that could be rising temperatures as in yesterday was sunny, today it's not sunny. The evidence where we find long-term climate change is ice cores. You might remember when you go into the drill into Arctic, it shows you the amount of CO2 particles that are trapped in ice and sediment cores. You could say the pollen analysis. A few of you mentioned tree rings. The thicker the ring, the colder it was. Okay, so anything along those lines could have helped show evidence for climate change. I think in the lesson we also looked at photographic evidence, paintings, text written in the past where you could hear about the Thames being frozen, people ice skating over, and now that's not the case anymore. Anything along those lines that prove that our climate has changed. Then question 1.11, it said here, using figure 5, which of the following statements is true? The answer was areas north of 60 degrees north have had the greatest increase in temperature. So they're the darkest color, which is purple, 2.5 degrees increase. They're all above 60 degrees latitude, which is above the UK, basically. Okay, so that's answer D. And then 9-mark question, you had loads of facts here. You all did really well at using the facts. It said here, you study figure 6 photograph showing strategies to manage climate change. A majority of you used them, which is amazing, but it's not, you can't just copy what it says on the handout. You have to tell me about it. Okay, so, and you see what I wrote in red on the mark scheme here. Give examples for both. Okay, so carbon capture, alternative energy, wicked. Where do you find those? Carbon capture, Iceland is a key case study. Alternative energy, you name it, there's 2 in the picture there. Well, wind turbines and solar energy. A lot of you just call them alternative energy without really telling me what they were and examples. And then explain to me how they work. Okay, so how does carbon capture carbon? Where does it go once it's captured? Renewable energy, how does it work? What does it do? Why is it a good thing? How does it help our climate? Okay, and that's a key thing. How does it reduce climate change? A lot of people gave me facts, gave me some basic good geographical understanding, but you had to talk to me about what is alternative energy. Can you give me an example? How does it work? And why does it reduce the amount of CO2 mitigation? So reducing the amount of CO2 emitted in the atmosphere. Similarly, adjusting sea levels, build your house on a stilt. How does that work? Why is that a good idea? And why does it help people adapt? And drought resistant crops, similar idea. Okay, so that's the key thing. The how and it works and why it helps is probably where most of you lost your marks. So on the mark scheme here, you can probably pause the video to see, but you could talk about, here's a bit of an explanation for each. And then these 2 which weren't on the handout, which I'm sure you revised, were international agreements like Glasgow Climate Pact, which COP26 literally just happened. You could have talked about that. It happened about a week before your mock. Planting trees, they absorb CO2, and then same for adaptation. Yes, you've got those 2, but you could also have talked about adjusting for water supply, like water harvesting scheme, etc.